All mics will be muted. We would like to welcome you. And again, I apologize for all technical difficulties. As we've been doing this series, it comes down to the third and almost down to the wire, and we ran into it. It does happen. So, again, my name is Robin Brown. I would like to welcome you to the third Misled series, where lead testing and what does that mean? Um, Everything in our society today tells us that lead poisoning is the most severest health issue that we are encountering right now. And a lot of us don't even know what lead poisoning really is, how it does, and what it does. And lead is something that enters into the child's body and it does harm, creating lead poisoning. So our first series talked about where is lead, where it is in our environment, what is it doing. Our second part was what is lead, what does it does, how does it harm us, where is it at. Our third series, which is tonight, leading into lead testing, why is this important? We also are going to be talking about the results. So tonight I'm going to have Tanis Quach presenting with me. CCOAL is a grassroots organization that was formed in who wanted to start working on this issue to end childhood lead poisoning, which leads into our mission to educate, collaborate, empower to eliminate childhood lead poisoning from within our communities as well as our families. And we would like to, again, ask everyone who will have questions and answers after this. So if you, as we're presenting, please write down all questions, all answers, questions that you have, and we'll try to answer them. So Tanis and I came up with a creative way to present tonight, and we wanted more dialogue type presentation. And
hello.
Hi, Tanis. Thank you for joining us. So we're going to get started. And Mr. Quach is going to interview me, sort of. Thank you, Tanis. Now we can go
Absolutely.
ahead and do this.
Okay, I would like to say God bless everyone. Thank you for having me. And let us proceed.
We're going to proceed.
Okay. The first question, Miss Robin Brown, and thank you for your service and patience as well. Um, why should I or anyone or their children be tested for lead?
The biggest reason of being concerned is that, again, the only way that a child will know or a family will know a child have lead poisoning is through a lead screening test. It's the only way to identify a child being poisoned. There's nothing else you could do. There's symptoms you can't, relate to by symptomatic things. It has to be done by this test.
Okay.
And
Okay.
in the opening of our Misled series, one of the questions was, did you know? Case did a study in our kindergartner grades to find that 25% of our kindergartners are actually poisoned with lead at the age of 5, entering into the school system. And our testing rates are so low that we have to increase that. So as we go forth, you're going to hear more information.
Ah, okay. And continuing, by law, does anyone and who must be tested for lead or have a lead screening?
Well, by federal law, all Medicaid children are to be tested for lead from the age of 0 to 72 months. We recommend as an organization, and as families been affected and working on this issue for 20 years plus now, is that all kids get tested for lead no matter what type of insurance you have. It shouldn't matter about Medicaid. It shouldn't matter if you got private insurance, even if you don't have any insurance. The most important thing is to request a lead screening test from your pediatrician to get the answers of the levels of lead in your child body.
Yes, ma'am. So yes, regardless of your insurance, everyone should have it, but the law only requires that children who receive Medicaid medical insurance receive it.
Yes, and we're actually under tested, even though it's a federal law. We are not testing our kids to the level of what's required. And that comes into what we do as an organization with our policy and advocacy, taking issues that we need to work on to change the law and the policy about, that all testing should be mandatory for all kids, no matter what type of
Absolutely.
insurance, because it's affecting kids all over, anywhere. Lead poisoning is not prejudice. It doesn't care where you live. It doesn't care where your income baseline is. It's there, and it can hinder no matter where you live at. And in the city of Cleveland, all our zip codes are considered high risk, as well as Cuyahoga County. All zip codes are high risk. So they say testing should occur within the high risk areas. All areas we live in are considered high risk.
Yes, ma'am. I strongly agree. It's an emergency, and that is a bit of a injustice, if I could dare to say so, that it's not a law that all children are screened for it, especially in high risk areas.
Yes, and as we get through, you guys will hear me talk about some things leading to the reasons why and justification of why things happen.
Yes. Okay. Continuing. How does a person after receiving a screening evaluate the screening and the results of that screening?
The most important thing is knowing that number. That is measured by micrograms per deciliter, giving you a equivalent of a number. We're used to getting test results saying negative, positive, abnormal, normal. We need to know what was that number measured in the blood. So the concern level of lead, federal wise, is 5 micrograms per deciliter. That's saying concern level.
Okay.
The diagnosed level
Um,
for lead poisoning is 10 micrograms per deciliter. That's when the child is considered actual lead poisoning. For my experience, my daughter was a 70 micrograms per deciliter. And these numbers mean something. At a level 2, a child can have damages from lead in their body with 2 micrograms per deciliter. My daughter was a 70. She took it to the high scale. We got a call saying she was at a death seizure coma level. At the time we got the phone call after a lead screening test. And the only way I knew my daughter's life was at stake was because of this lead screening that was done. If it wasn't done, she could have went into a coma. She could have went into a massive seizure. She could even drop dead right next to me, and I wouldn't have knew why any of these things would have been occurring, right? So now when we come in with the treatment for these things, the unknown would lead to testing and figuring out what led to this. But by having that lead screening test, we knew what would have made her do this. And so there's different stages, starting at a level 5. If you're diagnosed with a level, your family is diagnosed and given a level 5 micrograms per deciliter. That starts level of concern. That means you should be receiving from your pediatrician office some type of lead information, pamphlets, anything, but saying here is information to you. As it moves up from 5 to 9, you get the information. From 10 the diagnosed level to 15, they have what you call a lead screening investigation, right? And that's when you are now given a case manager from your health departments. It could be either your local health department, county health department, or the Ohio Department of Health would contact the family indicating that your child lead level is high. They then would want to meet with the family, and I like talking about this piece because they use the word investigation. And for most of us, we don't want no one coming in our house to investigate about anything. And that becomes a natural turnoff. Well, their wording needs to change, but they say by regulations they have to use that on the state level. But only that investigation is coming into the home to find out where the lead hazards are actually at. We don't want this child to be in that environment, so we have to come test your walls. We have to come do a questionnaire asking, if your house was built before 1978. We have to inquire, if anyone's working in an occupation that might be leading to lead dust coming into the home. So this investigation is a way to find out where the hazard is of lead actually poisoned this child. So when we hear that word investigation or you see it on the paperwork, do not let that fear you to take the next steps to get the help for yourself and your child. We don't want that word investigation to deter anyone. And if you have a question about anything, that you can always give us a call and we can walk you guys through it to ensure that you are not being looked at for other reasons.
Excellent, excellent. I mean, I could understand why that'd be a little reprehensible to, or a little bit, uncomfortable for people from the inner city, yes, and people from poorer communities, given our history as a community,
Yes. Yes, and
but yes, I feel like that is a necessary risk we must take and a necessary phobia we must dispel.
yes,
That
due
way, our
to the seriousness of this lead screening. Because if we don't screen, we can't know.
yes,
And
ma'am.
we have so many kids right now misdiagnosed. Our calculated number of children is like, when we did the census, is like 23,557 total kids under the age of 6. Our testing rate right now is only 11,057. So that means half of our kids aren't even being screened from get go, right? And off of the data we're using from the Colorado Board of Health website is that only 2,057 children out of that 11,000 that got tested, right? Only
Yes,
2,067 is confirmed lead test. The others had a test to say we think you got it, but we never got that second follow up. And that's what's important too. The first test is done by a finger prick, and that's a simple test to say, yes, it's lead in the body. But to confirm that, they like to do a blood draw type shot to pull it to get a confirmation of that first reading to confirm that it's actual lead and a more accurate amount of lead in the child's body, right? Well, we only have 2,057
exactly.
kids with confirmed tests out of the 23,500 plus so kids we have. So what does that mean? That means we either underdiagnosed or we're not diagnosed at all. And we got more kids in our populated numbers under that category than actual known poison kids. And with our history here in Cleveland, Cleveland, Ohio, being 3 times as Flint, Michigan, Our level of lead is 3 times as bad as Flint, Michigan. Ours is coming because of our housing stock being old, as well as our environment on the outside from our manufacturing. We're a manufacturing city. So all of the soot that came from the top of the foundations in the factories, as well as our lead gas that we used to have before 1987, it put it in our soil and outside environment. So our toxins from lead poison making us 3 times as bad um, as bad as Flint is due to our housing stock, where theirs was water. But we are lacking. Our number of kids been identified, and now because of the lack of testing. And before I continue, if you guys have any questions, please join in through chat, and we answer the questions as we go. We want to have live discussion through this. So if you guys can, you can put in there stack. How about if in chat you write stack, and we know the next person who want to ask their question, and you can verbally ask it by mic. How about that?
Yes.
Okay. So again, as
Okay.
we go,
So everyone in the Cuyahoga area should most likely emergently make sure that they have a screening for their family because of how widespread and how extremely concentrated it is.
Yes, for sure. Definitely for sure. We don't want you to wait for your child to become poisoned. We want you to be proactive to prevent the poisoning of your child. And the only way you would know if your child is poisoned or not is to get this lead screening test. And that's the way you have to say it. I would like to have my child screened for lead poisoning through a test. And it's the obligation of your medical physician to do so. And the
Oh,
age group, again, that we want to look at is 0 to 6. But we don't want to just focus with our kids. We do, but we also want to focus on our pregnant moms too. It's so important that during your pregnancy that you be screened for lead poisoning as well, because as adults, we could take lead in our bodies every day. It may not hurt us, but with the fetus within us, it will hurt. So, say we're around the demolition and we're at a bus stop and happen to be pregnant, right? And they're doing
yes.
demolition, which we talked about in past segments, and the water hose is not being used. And it's creating this big poof of dust, right? And you're standing in the midst of it. And you have all the hazards that just was in this old building now in the air, and you're breathing
Yes.
it in. When you're breathing it in, it is affecting the
And
fetus.
you commonly see that in
Yes,
East Cleveland, in East
yes,
Cleveland, with all of the demolition that's necessary, all the demolition they're doing, and the public transportation, and just children traveling, people commuting, you're
back and forth to
exposed
school, different things
to
of that
toxin.
nature. So, with pregnant women, we asked you as well to always get a test. Talk to your physician about lead screening test during your pregnancy, because not just can we get it from demolition, if we were poisoned as a child, it's still in our bones. Remember, we told you guys that on our second segment, that it stores in the bones. So, what is in the blood that we're talking about being tested today? Part of that lead that's in the body. So, my daughter had 70 micrograms per deciliter. Out of that 70, over 20% plus went in her bones. And it's stored in her bones, and it's going to stay in her bones. And with the marrow coming from helping to give nutrients to the baby and growth with our pregnancy, it's also important that we get tested while we're pregnant so we can help prevent our babies from being born with it, or we can be able to manage it once they're born. And we
Yes.
recommend all newborns to be tested due to the fact of the misdiagnosing of testing and testing rates not being done and scientifically knowing that we could carry this on into adulthood, that we should ask for a test when our children are born. Because if it's so carried over from us to our children through birth, then we can identify at birth if our child have poison and start being proactive acting on that, opposed to waiting to our children are 1 and 6 and finding it out.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Okay. Proceeding. What are the main methods a person becomes poisoned with lead?
Well, there's 2 ways that you become poisoned. Is either by mouth or by breathing. It's only you take it in by your mouth from eating of foods, or you could breathe the dust in by inhaling it. The lead dust is the most scariest thing because we can't see it by the naked eye. You cannot see lead dust by the naked eye. It is you have to see it through a magnascope, right? So the typical dust that we see may
Yes.
not and may have lead on it. So
Mm.
because you can't see us, when we're having a crack in our wall, like we talked about before, and we create that friction, or we're raising our windows up that's painted, and older frame windows, and we're opening our doors that's painted, it's creating a friction, right? And that dust is happening, but we can't see it, but we can breathe it. And that's the same with the demolition. We see the dirt poof, but do we actually see the lead dust in that poof? We don't know.
Exactly.
So,
So the main methods are through breathing particles or either actually directly eating them, ingesting them.
yes. And for, they say lead is a sweetener, that lead tastes sweet. And
Mm.
that draws kids back to the area that they found the lead in the first place. So if you have peeling and chipping paint, right? We and that child take that paint off and happen to eat it, right? They're going to
Yeah.
crave that sugar taste and they're going to go back again. For my daughter, she was addicted to sugar. I never forget at 9 years old, and we're hearing noise in the kitchen in the middle of the night, and we wondering what's going on. Get up, see she's standing in the kitchen with the canister like this, and sugar just pouring out because we took her off of sugar a week before and started giving her sugar free. And because she had that craving, she was going after that sugar. Today, she talks about a
Wow.
chalky, pasty taste that she still craves today. That was that same chalky, pasty taste she had from the lead as a child. And
Mm.
to this day, if she didn't advocate with me, if she didn't know what lead was, she said, Mom, I would go find me some lead and eat it because I crave it, even as an adult today. And so this matter is really, really, really a serious matter. You can't take it lightly. It's not something that we should ignore, and it's definitely something to get your child tested
Okay. Yes, I strongly agree. And the fact that it resembles things that are in our normal diet is such a like horrific and kind of like a insidious thing. It's just very diabolical. Like wow, like this industrial toxin actually has a flavor that mimics what we're used to eating and what we crave as children. It's almost so like evil you couldn't even fathom. Like wow.
for. And even as adults, we have to worry about it in our wine and different things because they actually used it as a sweetener in wine.
Mm.
So these are things we spoke about in our previous segments. Leading to this is where lead is in toys, It's in clothes, it's in jewelry, it's in makeup, it's everywhere. But if we don't know what to do with it, then it becomes bad for us. But if we can learn what lead poisoning is, what it do, how it affects us, why it's important to get our child tested, then we can help prevent it. And I know personally about having proper management at an early stage of finding out that your child can be successful. As devastating as lead poisoning is, it don't have to ruin our children's lives if we know how to counteract it. Because I was sure determined. Whatever lead took out my child body, I was putting it back in. When it said she lose IQ points, which is part of the symptoms that we don't know, right? But it is, I'm putting education back into my child. So that means walking down the street, counting the blocks of the sidewalks is still stimulating the brain for education. If it means counting the colors of houses of a certain color, it's still giving mental stimulation. As we told you guys before, lead poisoning actually becomes almost like a brain disease because it modifies the way that the brain functions in a child.
Yes. Yes.
So we're going to do that. So loss of IQ is one symptom that we um, don't know about, but right? But similar symptoms and why the testing is important because most symptoms mimic other illnesses. So
Uh
if we don't have this test, when our children come to us and say, "Ooh, my stomach is cramping," or "I got a stomach ache," we're not going to put lead poison. That's going to be our least subject matter that we would put a stomach ache and relate it to because most of us don't even know lead poisoning exists. A lot of us don't even know that lead poisoning is just as serious today as it has been in the AC, BC, before Christ, after Christ, because that's how long lead has been an issue. And we shouldn't be dealing with lead poisoning of our children today and now 2021.
okay. Okay, so what would be some of the most immediate symptoms that if a person observes their child and would be symptoms of concern, symptoms that would be likely linked to exposure that you would consider cause for concern?
I would say when you're seeing behavioral issues within your children that is abnormal, where they're a little aggressive, more than norm, we might say, "Ooh, my child gonna be a bad, he gonna kick butt," but that's not normal. That ain't normal, right? If we say we find our children are irritable and irritated, that's not normal. Those are some of the similar signs that people relate to. Another that gets to me, and I'm really concerned that people aren't concerned, is our children being diagnosed with ADD, attention deficit disorder, and ADHD, attention deficit hyperactive disorder. Our kids are being diagnosed with that like a cold. That's not normal. That's not normal. And our school system is seeing kids come in constantly into the school system with these two issues, which counteract productivity for education.
Yes.
And you're not concerned? Why? It's crazy. The number of children being diagnosed with that is bad. Another one is our juvenile delinquency. Having issues within the juvenile delinquency is a sign of something going wrong or something not right. Also, getting into adulthood, if we going into repetitive incarceration, has been linked to this. Freddie Gray was diagnosed with lead poisoning, and they linked that to his activities of his adult life, which led even to his death. And so this is real. This don't stop. I have 5 generations of families in my family affected by lead today. And we're just one family. And if we got our testing rates up, we'll find more families are affected by lead more than we know. And we have to boost our testing rates up. We have to demand our kids get tested. We got to share with our friends and our families who got small kids who don't know about this issue to find out about this issue and get your child tested first. We have to advocate for ourselves. And we can't wait
Yes.
for no one to advocate for us. Due to
So
lead being a racial issue, and it is, and we have to keep it real.
so someone has a question
Okay, sorry.
on our.
Schehera, would you want to read the questions out for us? We have
Sure.
with the new. Go ahead, Schehera.
With the new presidential administration coming in, will you utilize the new environmental protocols being implemented?
We will be. Actually, we have to see what they all are to make sure and ensure that it's better for the people. And that's where we have a lot of people advocating around this issue. We have a current one about our housing stock right now because that is our issue. And it's dealing with the rental units, right? Being repaired. Um, the Cleveland Land Safe Cleveland Coalition was created to help find resources for landlords to get their homes fixed, which they're doing a good job with. But let's see what happens as we're going through COVID and the landlords are going through additional hardship because of COVID and rent not being paid, right? But what we do want to do is try to change the environmental level. And we can't fault the homeowner, landlords, because they're not the ones who put lead in the paint that now have our houses in toxic levels, right? But what we can do is ensure that it get changed and that homeowners and landlords are never the ones, as well as parents, held accountable for the outcome of lead poisoning that none of us had nothing to do with. And that's what's going to be important as they go forth. I'm excited that they finally put this topic up there to that level, but it's about everything else, watching, seeing, advocating that they keep it on the right course. I can say in the state of Ohio, we are part of the Ohio Lead Free Kids Coalition, which is a state level organization to keep the state based around lead poisoning in the state of Ohio and working on it. And I have to say that the governor created a lead safe task force. Governor DeWine did. And we are sitting very close to that committee. We just submitted to them 16 different recommendations and they chose. So we're on the way going up, but we still got a lot of work to do and a lot of awareness to make be heard.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So remain optimistic in Mr. Biden, I guess, as much as you can be.
Yes, but we'll watch and see.
Oh, there's an article that was placed in the commentary section, I guess related to this issue and related to the question, I believe. Let's take a look here. Okay. Nature.com.
Okay.
Yes. Biden's pick to head U.S. Environment Agency heartens scientists. Okay, let's take a glance at some of this information. Veteran environmental regulator Michael Reagan will lead the Environmental Protection Agency, joining a team of experienced climate appointees. Oh, it's a brother as well, Michael Reagan.
So we're hoping EPA.
Well, yeah, we would have to evaluate.
Watch him and reach out to him and see what his agenda is.
Yeah, most definitely. he seems to be a brother. I hope that he's aware of this issue, if nothing else, and he'll be able to, you know,
we'll make
invest.
sure that he knows. How about that?
Yes.
We'll make sure that we get in touch with him and send it as an organization because that's what we do. Not just educate, we like to advocate for change in policies, and we also like to be a support for families to be able to work around this issue. So yes, we definitely will be.
Yes, and that actually is a prestigious thing, like for a brother to now be the head of the Environmental Protection Agency. I really hope that he has a personal consideration for this issue, and we definitely need to reach out to that man and contact his associates to see what federal recognition we can get for this issue, because it is an emergency. It's greater than Flint, and that was considered a national crisis. So if we're greater than that, how do you identify our crisis?
Exactly. And even when another symptom, and it kind of came up as you were talking, is high dropout rates. High school dropout rates, that's linked to lead poisoning issues within communities.
Okay. We have another question. Do you suggest testing all children at birth for lead?
We do. We recommend it on the fact of the various toxic hazards that we could get lead poisoning from in our environment, from our housing, from demolition, from things just not being done correctly and properly, even the remodeling and renovating of our homes, which we'll be talking about in our last segment coming up next week. Those things can create lead hazards and we don't even know it. Our neighbor, my great nephew, actually became lead poisoned because of a neighbor's garage had peeling and chipping paint on, and it blew into their backyard. And he out there playing in the grass, in with not bare soil but grassy soil, the paint chipped in the grass, them touching around it. He ended up getting poisoned from there. How do we know? The home got fully inspected for lead. Couldn't find it nowhere. The inspector just happened to see the specks in the grass and went and got a couple of the chips out. And those were the elevated paint chips that he ended up being poisoned by. So because it is just around in our environment, it's again so important that we know to get our children tested. I say during pregnancy. I say when they become actual children.
Right. Even before birth.
At birth and every year, 6 months after that.
Yes.
If your window is open and the demolition is going on and that dust is traveling, is coming through your window, right? And if your children toys is right up under that window, they go to play, they could become poisoned. And if you don't get that test, you won't know. So we don't want you to wait for your doctor to ask you. We don't want you to wait for 1 to 6. We want you to do it proactively, not just for this, but for many things related to our health, our lives.
Okay. Another question we have, could you provide a link to your 16 recommendations to Governor DeWine?
We can, but if you go to the Ohio Lead Free Kids Coalition website, you will find them. They're listed there.
Yes. So can you repeat that, please?
It's Ohio Lead Free Kids Coalition.
Ohio Lead Free Kids Coalition .com or .org?
.org. But if you just put Ohio Lead Free Kids Coalition, it'll pop up for you in the search engine, and you'll see their website.
Excellent.
Everything that we've been working on to submit to Governor DeWine, as well as just working to support parents, because we have been left out of the equation of lead poisoning as far as the solution building. And that can't be tolerated or allowed because we're the one living with our children on a daily basis. And we can all find out data from Google or any, search engine. But what you can't find out with is how our children respond to lead poisoning. And every child is different. How it affects children is different. If it's going to affect a child is even different. Through the grace of God for my daughter, she didn't get the impacts of what she should have truly had at that level if we were not knowledgeable about lead poisoning. She would have been impacted. And my daughter would not be the wonderful, beautiful daughter she is with the capabilities, with the loss of her IQ points. She's still considered special and gifted, right? She couldn't do that. I mean, she maintained a 3.47 grade point average all the way up to a 3.67. Today, I stand proudly representing CCOAL, a mom working on this issue, knowing that with early management, my baby was able to graduate out of high school, honor courses, accelerated, take college at the same time of her high school years, graduate with 32 credits to take it to her college level, and graduate from college with her bachelor's in 3 years. A child with a 70 micrograms per deciliter has not assailed to that level today because it was not known, it wasn't diagnosed early enough, didn't have the right management tools, which I'm going to lead into real shortly because it's almost time to be getting off. Good conversation on this, but we'll be here as long as you want to be here to get this out to you. Um, the symptoms we talked about, right? And
Yes.
there's so many symptoms again that mimic so many things. But the sad part is our children that's being diagnosed with ADD, ADHD, because they don't have that testing diagnosed number, they're being treated as, testing and finding out because we don't know what created the ADD and the ADHD. We don't know what's causing their behavioral issue. So we're working with medicine, we're giving things that medicine could be counteracting how that child is progressing. So that test is just so important.
Absolutely. Absolutely, ma'am. Oh my goodness. Um in closing, and thank you again, Ms. Brown, for your information. It's been pivotal. Um how do we, let's say your family or someone in your home has been contaminated with lead, what are some immediate and practical management techniques to resolve that and deal with that?
The first thing we recommend is starting with a healthy diet. Eating healthy foods is a way to bring lead out of the body. You can do leafy green vegetables, broccoli, things high in calcium, higher in iron is good for your children to help start lowering the levels down. I'm gonna tell you, walking with lead is not an easy walk. I cry to this day when I hear about other kids being poisoned, and you might hear it in my voice, and I have to keep myself from being choked up and bringing tears to my eyes because it's not something easy to deal with when your children having behavior issues, other things in life is going on, and you got a lot to do, and then you worried about, a healthy diet. We're asked to keep little good snacks like pre-bagged celery sticks, carrot sticks, ranch dips, things that they could go to and kind of get quickly, ensuring that their hands is washed first.
Yes.
And another way to help maintain is washing hands for at least 30 seconds. And we ask people to make it fun for kids. Sing roll, roll, roll your boat. That's
Mm,
about 30 seconds long. And teach
yes.
them how to properly go in and out of their hands, over the hands, over the nails, rub them and make bubbles and scrub them, so that hand washing become fun. Hand washing, good hand washing habits is not just good for lead; it's good, period. Right?
That
So
that
if
reminds
we start them
we
with good hand washing, we can get them going.
that reminds me. We also excluded occupational workers who are in occupations that subject them to that potential toxin and coming home and perhaps potentially carrying that dust home. So
Yes,
what management technique should they use?
we say take your clothes off at the door, take your shoes off at the door. Those are management techniques we can do on a daily basis. If you work in a profession, have your coveralls and use the equipment that they asked you to use or provide. And if they don't
Okay,
provide it for yourself because we don't want the dust to travel with you on your clothing. Outside of taking your shoes off at the door, outside of good hand washing, diets, these are the first, and early education is another that we recommend for people to do.
okay,
Those
Miss
are things
Brown.
that get you started.
Um, we have one last question before we close out. Um, People, or let me see here. I believe it was David or everyone requesting, what can a person do to get involved in the community to address and fight lead?
One, come join CCOAL. Become a member of CCOAL, and that's by reaching out to us by calling 216-220-6925. 6925, I'm sorry, or project info 216 at gmail.com. We're here for you. If you got a question, if you need support, call us. We're going to get it to you because we vetted into this. It's our children who's being affected by that. And so we want to make sure your children don't become affected by that. We're here for you if you need us. Again, any questions, anything, we've been around we're actually the only grassroots organization in the city of Cleveland working with this. So we've been here and we're here for you.
Yes, yes. Okay.
Um,
Now, in closing, when
I, I,
when should we expect to continue gathering information and being further educated?
well, our next segment, thanks for asking, is coming up. Our last webinar segment, which is really a way that CCO took their community in-person engagement to an online platform because of COVID-19. We knew this issue could not be heard for one, and we needed to take it online. So what we want to do is continue community engagement around this. We want members to call us. We want people to join us so that as we go future, we can have our monthly meetings, right? And we can work more around the issues and different things. But we also want to give you more information through these just real live, real talk, keep it simple, keep it real conversations because that's what it's all about.
Oh yeah, and not to neglect, every single Thursday weekly, a small group of young guys and young people, we organize to educate and organize behind the issue of lead too. We're called Undivided Cleveland. If you want to more immediately get involved, we invite everyone to support us online and even join us on our daily invitationals to people and informing people on every Thursday.
And I'm smiling because I'm so glad he mentioned that. As we have to fill this gap we have, and we're hoping as CCO, bridging with Undivided Cleveland, that voided piece that's missing nowadays is being covered up, and we can walk from side to side with each other, working on issues in our community. This is what it's going to take. This is how things is going to have to move. So I'm welcome for my young ladies out on them streets because I've been walking them for 25 years. And now we have some young millennial individuals picking up this issue. That's
Yes.
the ones affected by this issue. And they should be the ones talking about the issue. So I'm like excited with the collaboration and as we're going forth. We will hope that the world comes back open and we could gather again in person. We're looking to do some things in the future to continue to get information to people because everybody's not online. And we can't forget that population either. And we can't make them become online because they may just can't. Not that they don't want to, they can't. So we're going to reach everybody across the board to get
Yes.
this information to them.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Brown. I value your service, and I pray that everyone was thoroughly informed and will continue to privately inform themselves. And I just want to continue to extend my appreciation for you. Thank you.
And January 19th, is it 19th, 16th, I'm sorry, will be our last misled webinar series that will be talking about lead safe cleaning and maintenance techniques. So we tried to cover four main topics on lead. What is lead? Where is lead? The testing of lead, as well as how to maintain your home for lead. And then we're going to take this further. So this is just the start of a start to get started. And I'm excited to be part of this. Any questions going now? If not, I love you. I look forward to you guys next week. Tell people about it. Get them on here because we will be doing demonstrations.
Yeah.
We'll be doing demonstrations on how to do those techniques as we go forward. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.